in this exploration of why pain is inevitable as a large portion of the human experience, I want to cover 5 riddles which need to be solved in order to liberate us from a predominant focus on both pain and the fear of experiencing it. Riddle 1. In a parentally illiterate culture, parents will traumatize their children without necessarily knowing what trauma is, why it's happening, or what to do about it. A culture that makes no effort to learn or practice the science of good parenting will be parentally illiterate, right? So a culture that makes a scientific effort to parent well, first of all, looks at the data set, right, of healthy, well-adjusted, contributing members of a culture, looks at that data around the world, and distills the best practices, the practices that lead to the most number of healthy, happy, highly competent contributing members of their culture, and then adopts those practices, synthesizes them, and shares them with their citizens, right? These are the best practices, and perhaps gives some feedback, not necessarily control, but feedback, like, here's what you're doing, and these are the best practices. A traumatized child will always decide that they are bad and that they deserve to be punished, which is why they tell themselves they are being traumatized, being abandoned, having their heart broken, being hit. So as not to antagonize the abuser further, right? A 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old could tell their parents, exactly where they're dysfunctional, shame-based, incompetent, and absurd, but that invariably results in more abuse. On the other hand, when the child tells themselves that they are bad and that they deserve the punishment, the neglect, the trauma, there is hope, right? Because 1, they're not further antagonizing the abuser, and 2, if it's their fault, presumably they're going to be able to fix it one day. Now, a child who decides that they are bad will start acting, will start thinking and feeling consistent with their self-image. It's the nature of human psychology that when you form a story, an image about yourself, you will feel crazy, you will feel disintegrated if this is your image of yourself and then you do something completely different. Right? So in order to integrate with the story that I'm bad and I deserve to be punished, a child as they grow up will have to do more bad things. In other words, you can't justify an image of being bad if you don't do at least some bad things. Otherwise, you start facing the crisis of insanity, of saying you're incredibly bad because you do all these wonderful things. Our culture does not teach psychology to help children heal the trauma, which often leaves deep scars and fuels the belief that they're bad and deserves to be punished, right? So the child who believes they are bad becomes an adult who behaves badly, and thus the grown-up now passes the, quote, bad behavior, the new traumatic cycle, to the next generation, right? So this riddle explains why the majority of people feel bad, behave badly, and give that abuse to the next generation. The second riddle. In a traumatic culture, everyone is exposed to trauma directly and indirectly by witnessing the trauma of others. Using a little bit of common sense, we understand that we are part of a traumatic probability field. Right? We understand that if other people near us are being traumatized, then it is probable, could be a small probability, could be a high probability, but it is probable that we will be traumatized as well. The more a person is exposed directly or indirectly to trauma, the more the more our reptilian brain is stimulated. The more our reptilian brain is stimulated, the more sociopathic we become. The reptilian brain is a sociopathic operating system with the following protocols. Fight, if it looks like we can win the fight, dominate. Flight, if it looks like we cannot win the fight, to escape. Freeze, if neither of those options are expedient, and to manipulate or strategize or please out of fear, not out of anything sincere and noble, but just out of survival and security-based fears. When human beings are trapped in their reptilian brain, when the attention in the body goes to the reptilian brain, human beings are no longer human beings. They are animals, right? No different than reptiles, except they have an incredibly powerful analytical mind. It is painful to be a human being watching a majority of people blame the victims of abuse, turn away and allow the strong to dominate because they can, right? So those bastions of humanity in a sociopathic environment experience the most pain. When that human brain is unanswered with empathy, unanswered with humanity, it becomes even more painful and more isolated to be the minority element of humanity in a sea of sociopathic behavior. At a certain point in this rise of pain, the pain of witnessing the original event, the pain of witnessing the sociopathic response by the majority to that event, and the pain of that pain going unsupported, unanswered, turned away from in a further sociopathic protocol. As that pain grows with each wave of sociopathic response, it becomes too high to tolerate. And the only way to respond to a pain that large becomes to close off the human or empathic brain and retreat with the majority into sociopathic brain territory with the reptilian brain. As such, the reptilian brain and its protocol, its sociopathic protocol, is a virus that tends to spread. Now, the final part of this riddle is that it is easier to shut down and numb out the pain than it is to reawaken our humanity after the pain or after we have shut down. And the reason for that is you can think of it, much like icing a wound, right? So, the dentist is doing some surgery, you inject Novocaine and you feel nothing, right? But when the Novocaine wears off, you have that bitter smell, the pain starts to throb back, right? It's uncomfortable. Right? When you ice something, it goes numb and the swelling comes back, right? When you turn away, go off to the movies, addict, do something to avoid pain, when it returns, sometimes the pain is worse because it's gone unattended, because we were numb. So it is tempting to continue the addictive cycle and avoid the pain. The third riddle is that when people hurt us, it suggests that they lack the skill to meet their own needs and fulfill their own desires and not hurt us, right? So it takes more skill to do multiple things, to achieve multiple objectives, right? If you just want to get your hands on $1 million somehow or other, right? You rob a bank, that's your only objective. It's much easier than get $1 million, get the approval of mom, get the approval of dad, don't get arrested, don't commit any crimes. It gets harder and harder the bigger and the more complex your objectives are. So it takes more skill for other people to get what they want and not hurt other people in the process than to get some isolated goal and hurt other people in the process. When people lack skill, they're stuck in an either-or dynamic. Either they don't get what they want, and they feel self-pity, often because other people are stepping over them and getting what they want, or they get what they want, but then they hurt other people, right? So sometimes those people are us, right? We're near people and we're close to people who, in order to get what they want to fulfill their agenda, they lie to us, betray us, hurt us, give us an STD, steal from us, don't put in, follow through and do what they say they would do, right? And so that causes us pain, right? But in order to do that, right, in order to enter an either-or paradigm and say, okay, in order to get what I want, I'm going to betray you. In order to do that, I've got to be willing to be sociopathic, right? Now, once someone has decided, okay, I'm not going to get what I want without stepping on a few other people. I want what I want. There's nothing for it. Okay, screw other people. I'm going to go for what I want. They're now in sociopathic territory, right? Now, if you plead with someone in sociopathic territory, hey, this is really hurting me. They'll say, I know, but that's just the way it's got to be, right? Meaning I don't have the skill to get what I want and be sensitive to your needs and feelings. So tough, right? That's the way it's going to be. Well, the only way to deal with a sociopath, so if your pain goes up because you bring it up to someone who you hope is a human being and their response is, no, I'm in sociopathic mode, I want this, and sorry, I've got to hurt you. Or they're not sorry, they just don't care. In order to respond to a sociopath, you can't just bring evidence of their damage to them because a sociopath doesn't care enough to do something about it. So the only way to respond to a sociopath who's hurting you, right, is sometimes to become sociopathic. Like they say, your pain doesn't matter. I'm willing to cause you pain to get what I want. But if you give them back pain, right, you do a negative press article about them, then that causes them pain, right? Then their sociopathic behavior that causes you pain now also causes them pain. But if you're doing that consciously to cause them pain, you've also introduced sociopathic behavior. You've basically said, I'm dealing with a sociopath who is willing to cause me pain in order to get what they want. And so there's no way to influence them with my tears, with my grief, with my anger at being stepped on. The only way to influence them is by causing them pain, i.e., the only way to influence a sociopath is to behave sociopathically towards them. Well, now you have two sociopaths who are both willing to cause pain in order to get what they want, right? So, it's an issue. The fourth riddle consists of the probability field around our interaction with the unknown. 99.9% of all reality is unknown, and much of it is unknown. Meaning the universe, reality, is so big that we don't begin to even know what we don't know that we don't know, right? We have, for example, 5 senses. Another way of saying that is we have 5 observing and measuring devices. But what if we didn't have ears? Would we know that sound existed, right? Well, amongst all of the thousands and thousands of possible observing and measuring devices, how many of those might reveal things, might reveal dimensions that we don't know, right? So we have that blind spot. But then we just have the vastness of time and space, right? Most of reality is in the distant past or in the distant future, right? Most of reality is outside of this moment in time. Most of reality is outside of this territory in space. Now, more than half of all that unknown and unknown reality is happening at cycles that are well beyond the human lifespan, right? So we have a 100-year cycle, right? And then we, through our observing and measuring devices, we can look back in certain areas a few days, like in certain areas, where are my keys? Nobody seems to know, right? We can't even find those, right? But we at least pretend that we can see clearly what was going on thousands of years ago in certain areas, right? But, right, the vast majority of reality, right, it hasn't happened in our lifespan. Right? It hasn't happened in the lifespan of the species. Right? There are 100-year events, there are 1,000-year events, there are million-year events, there are billion-year events, there are trillion-year events that haven't yet even happened for the first time. But we don't know most of those events, or at least half of them, right? They don't happen enough for them to be on our radar. We think of things that have happened in the last few years, typically speaking, and then we're shocked, right? We're shocked when something that happened a few hundred years ago suddenly happens again. The decline of an empire, it keeps happening, but we're shocked, right? So even though we reduce our exposure to the unknown and the dread of all fears being out of control, by repeating a family pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being in a relatively familiar location, right, on the surface of the earth, often in our own country, there will always be surprises, right? As some of those larger patterns, or some of the many things we just don't know that we don't know, hit us. And when they do, coming out of the unknown with surprise, some of those patterns are going to be bigger than we are. Right? There's a bigger mass of energy that hits us with a surprise. That is a traumatic event. We cannot integrate and decide how to respond in the midst of being traumatized, right? So we're going to tend to respond badly, right? We also can't recover from that trauma in a traumatically illiterate culture with any predictable success, right? So some of those surprises are going to be traumatic. Others of those surprises, not traumatic, but we just don't know what we're doing. So we either hurt the other, the pattern that we're encountering, the group, the human being, the emotional state, we hurt that by being insensitive, by not knowing enough to know what we're doing. Or it hurts us, or we hurt us because something came towards us. Our response was we go check it out. So we moved towards it, right? But it was radioactive. We went and checked it out. We got severely harmed. And we didn't know that that was the wrong thing to do until it's happened, and then we learn enough about it, sometimes by it happening repeatedly. And by that time, right, by the time we learn how to respond to that type of situation effectively, we may be dead. We may have killed other animals, other people, other environments. We may be in traumatic shock, right? But all of that is painful. So there will be pain as the human ego encounters the unknown. And in that encounter, doesn't know what it's doing, lacks confidence, competence, skill to be harmonious in that encounter, right? Which means that any energy that's bigger than us, as we are not harmonious, like if we unharmoniously collide with a truck or a boulder, right? We are severely damaged, right? But if we unharmoniously collide with a rabbit, right, the rabbit is severely damaged. It depends on which is the smallest pattern of energy, but it's not good, right? There's pain on both sides of an unattuned encounter, and they will be there, right? They will be there, those unattuned encounters. Now, the fifth riddle is, the riddle of seeking to become human in a largely sociopathic environment. Meaning much of the behavior on the planet today is fear-based, meaning it's coming from the reptilian brain. I want to look good so that I can get this and so that I can do that because that's what I want. It doesn't matter about other people, right? I want you to believe me here so that I can have sex with you even though it's not true because I want to have sex with you, right? And you're upset as you discover the truth. That doesn't matter to me. I mean, we're talking sociopathic, right? I want to do this so that I can make more money even though I understand that the shortcut that I'm taking to make more money kills more people or puts them in harm's way. Right? I could install fire extinguishers here, but I'd have to pay for them. And if you die, well, that's the insurance company, right? And so 70% of human behavior is people knowingly doing things that they understand is not best for themselves, not best for the environment, not best for other people, but it is expedient. Now, that creates an enormous amount of suffering for the human animal and our planet. Now, if we develop as a human being by accessing our empathic brain, we will care more about ourselves, about our ecology, about other people. In an environment with those dynamics, we will be surrounded by people in different degrees of distress and pain, right? As the brain opens up to care more, we will feel more pain because people around us are in pain. 20% of the population is depressed, 70% is lonely, right? 90% of the population does not feel deeply and fully loved, but it is a need. Love and belonging is a need, like oxygen for the human brain, for the human being. It's a need. Yet 90% of people experience a large deficit, right? The body needs oxygen and experiences a large deficit. There's going to be pain. Now, this is compounded by the fact that the brain prioritizes pain, avoiding pain, and responding and noticing the fear of pain at a 5-to-1 ratio. So you can look at this yourself. You're out on a picnic, you're with your family. It's a beautiful day. Nothing but beauty, right? Wildflower meadows, a nice brook. You're wading in the brook, right? Under a nice shade tree. It's a sunny day. The breeze, so delicious, out in the countryside. Right? Everything is perfect for miles, right? But you see a small wriggling shape in the water. Instantly, your brain is on high alert. Why? Right? A wriggling shape. How big is it? This long. Okay. How far away is it? Like 5 feet. Are you in pain? No. No. But you might be. You might be. It might be a snake. It might be a poisonous snake. It might swim towards you. These are all ifs. And it might bite you. And it might endanger your life if it did, right? So 5 ifs from one tiny little pattern in the whole, magnificent picture. Where is your brain? Enjoying the sunset? Admiring the flowers? Laughing at your wife's joke? No. Your whole brain is on that one tiny little shape because it might produce pain. Right? It could produce death. Right? Enough pain leads to death, right? And so the brain is looking, scanning all the time for sources of probable pain. Now, most of them never happen, but the brain obsesses with them, right? The picnic doesn't matter as soon as the snake is spotted, right? And so there is a prioritization of pain that, regardless of how big it is brought to the forefront, which means that you feel fear and fear of pain. You might even imagine, oh, that would be so horrible to rush to the hospital. Where am I going to get to when this day? Oh, it's going to be so terrible, right? You're living in pain, the pain that doesn't even happen. The pain that does happen, that's the focus, right? So even if there's just 20% pain going on in the world, the fact that your brain brings it into the forefront and pays 5 more times the attention to something bad as it does to all the nice good things, means that you will be in a lot of pain and a lot of fear, even though it may be a mild threat at a low ratio that does not happen very often. You're still going to feel the fear and pain as if it does. So this means as long as that we're in a world where people are in pain, we will feel empathy, pain for them, and this feeling will be prioritized in our brains. And because we're dealing with competence, and also you can kind of look at it like this. If one person in a group of 100 feels bliss, it does not in any way suggest that the other 99% of people are going to start blissing out anytime soon, right? One of the interesting wake-up calls for billionaires, right, is that when they start staying at the finest residences and with the finest staff and the finest employees in the world, one of the upsetting wake-up calls is they don't feel much happier than a typical person who can afford, they have a roof over their head, they can have healthy food and, have a basic job, right? A billionaire does not feel that much happier than a secure janitor, statistically speaking, right? And that's a wake-up call, right? But you don't realize that until you have access to that, and you realize that my brain is just focusing on different problems and pain, right? And we're surrounded, right? And with the news and media bringing, there's an earthquake over here, there's an earthquake over there, right? The more empathic that we are, right, the more we're aware of those things, the more it hurts, right? Now, obviously, nobody is born saying, I want to feel as much pain as possible for as long as possible so that I can feel more pain, right? When you have beliefs, no pain, no gain, in certain environments, you'll have people feel pain because they want to feel good, right? I have to feel pain now so that I can feel good later. Like I'm going to save money now. I want to spend it, but I'm going to save it. That's pain. So I can be rich later by investing it, right? Then I'll have more pleasure in the future. But people don't feel pain so that they can feel pain so that they can feel pain, right? But we have a tremendous amount of pain. Now, there is an endless amount of energy in the universe, right? We look at the release as a single atom is split, for example, right? It's enormous energy all around us. Now, we are spending 24 hours a day, human beings in general, doing our best to feel less pain and feel better sustainably, or better is at least a quick fix through some addiction, right? We want to feel good, right? We're spending vast amounts of time, vast amounts of natural resources, vast amounts of money trying to feel good. And we are failing, right? We are incredibly incompetent at transforming time, money, and natural resources into sustainable well-being. Much of the time, money, and natural resources we spend creates more pain than if we had done nothing, right? Now, what that's talking to is a level of incompetence, a lack of intelligence. Intelligence is measured by the efficiency with which time, money, and natural resources are transformed into sustainable human well-being, right? Nobody wants unsustainable well-being, like rack up a bunch of credit card debt and go bankrupt and then be on the street. Nobody wants that. No, right? They want to rack up a bunch of long-term profits, buy things, and still have more money afterwards, right? They want to eat things that feel good to eat, and then they want to feel better afterwards, right? But we lack the skill to do that. So we don't, right? Now, back to that dynamic, right? Just because one person is blissing out in a group of 100 does not mean that everyone is going to bliss out, right? If they start chanting or dancing or whatever, they may lighten the mood or they may irritate people. It depends. People are very good, right? People are so good. Back to that kind of billionaire example, you can have it all and be fuming because the one person you thought was, most attractive doesn't want to go on a date with you, right? Fuming, right? It doesn't matter, right? Or your Rolls Royce color was slightly off and you're enraged, right? There is no perfect world. It can't be bought. And plenty of people discover that they're just as frustrated and miserable no matter how much money they have or what their job description is or whatever like that, right? Or how beautiful their partner is or handsome. You can still be miserable when other people around you are happy. However, right? So it's a weak thing. So if one person is joyful and happy, it does not follow that everyone else will become joyful and happy. But look at the dynamic in reverse. Imagine 100 monks chanting in ecstatic bliss, right? They're sitting meditation, they're wishing peace for the world and well-being, they're good at it, right? So they're in a pretty good place, right? Nice, beautiful temple, all that. Well, one person walks into the room and shoots a gun. Maybe shoots one of the monks and says, I'm going to keep shooting each of the monks unless I get all of your money. Well, the joy, the ecstasy is instantly collapsed into traumatic fear. Meaning one person can collapse ecstatic bliss into terror in about 1 minute. But we have yet to meet the human being that can take a group of self-absorbed, narcissistic, depressed, addicted Westerners and in 1 minute make them all happy, right? So we can take ecstatic people and make them terrified in 1 minute, but we cannot take ordinary people and make them happy in a minute. We can't even do it in a week, right? There will be grumpy, if you take a group of depressed, grumpy people, a week later, some of them will still be depressed and grumpy, right? But we can take ecstasy down to terror in a minute. It's an asymmetrical ratio, and it's partly because our own brain is working against the goal of happiness. It prioritizes life over happiness. And as a result, it prioritizes analyzing threats over enjoying the moment. Because analyzing threats might prolong life, enjoying the moment does not correlate directly with with a long life. Right? It's fun, obviously, but it's not about prolonging the life. So it may take hundreds or thousands of years before human beings develop the competence to spend their time, money, and natural resources in a way that creates long-term sustainable well-being for themselves and others, right? You can't be an empath, you can't be a human and enjoy other people's suffering, right? That's how you know the Christians that delight in the idea of those horrible people going to hell so we can, suffer, right? They're not human beings, right? A human being, and that's how you know that version of God is, a little bit rewired. It's a sociopath, right? Only sociopaths say that do what I tell you or I'll burn you alive for eternity, right? So there's a little bit of rewiring there, empathy, humanity, love, unconditional love, cruelty, revenge, and sociopathic behavior, and the delight in watching other people suffering, right? That's a sociopathic religion, to basically say, I have to be good because I fear God, right? I have to do the right thing because I don't want to be burnt alive, right? And you're doing the bad thing. I know it's fun now, but wait until you're burning in eternity, right? The whole thing is a sociopathic fear of a tyrant. It's not, you don't fear someone or something that loves you unconditionally. There's nothing to be afraid of, right? It's a condition, big condition. Do what I say, figure out, read my mind, do it perfectly, or burn alive for all eternity. So until that happens, every human being, right, until we reach a level of competence where we can look around and not only see that, yes, we are living a good life and making good progress, but the people around us are fulfilled. Their needs for survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem, developing their talents, creating abundance of value for themselves and others, being a part of something bigger. Their needs are being fulfilled beautifully and more beautifully all the time, right? Until we look around and see that, there will be sadness, fear, depression, bitterness, hopelessness, helplessness, anger, cynicism, right? Exhaustion, and pain, as well as the fear of feeling those pains. There will be self-pity, right? There will be rage. There will be hate, right? And our brain will prioritize those painful possibilities 5 times more than those joyful elements of the moment, right? So pain will continue. It will be with us for those hundreds or thousands of years until we as a species learn the art, learn the science of being human, as we learn the art and the science of solving the 5 riddles of pain.